Okay, we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mustafa Ali. I'm the marketing executive here at Max USA Corp. And thanks for joining us for our live panel discussion. Today we have Jack Nix, Chief Operations Officer at Shelby Erectors. And then we also have Robbie Warhel, Regional Manager for the Southeast Division for Max USA.
So Jack, again, welcome. We appreciate you joining us.
Hey, thanks, Robbie. I really appreciate that, and thanks for inviting me to talk about my passion, which is rebar and in construction. And I do want to apologize to everybody. I didn't have my internet at my house, so I had to jump in my car and come out and work off my hotspot. So hopefully this all goes very well for us.
Very good, very well. And the technology is great when it works, right? So, hey, tell us a little bit, Jack, about you and yourself and how you got into business in Shelby Erectors.
Yeah, so I'm a second generation iron worker. I started in 1985, right out of high school. Went to go work for my dad's company. Started right at the bottom, toting rods and then learning how to tie. Was in the field for 12 years, working as mostly, started off a rod buster and then started running work at the age of 19, 20 years old. Was a foreman for about 10 years. Got an opportunity to start scheduling work for guys and moving my way towards the office. And then I moved into the office, and then my dad and I transitioned after I had about 3-4 years in the office. He went back out in the field and started erecting structural steel, and I stayed in the office, ran the operations for his company. I was with him for about 25 years. Yeah, so that's my background. I'm an iron worker, had my hands on it, so I, been there, done that, know what's going on out there in the workplace.
Very good.
And
so when
Shelby
you started,
Erectors, yep. Shelby Erectors started 25 years ago, really just as a concept of wanting to have a company of our own for my wife and I. She was a teacher, and being in the construction industry, I knew the importance of minority companies, and so I talked to her about maybe owning her own construction company, and I could work for her as a consultant and doing the operations side. So 25 years ago, we got started. We kind of limped in, took us a while to get any traction, but about 10, 11 years ago, we really started taking off. She actually got surplus as a teacher. And so out of need, we started getting some construction jobs, started with one job at a time, and, went from there. And now I think we got 40 active projects. We did 17.5 million in labor last year. So we're pretty proud of where we're at. We have over 100 employees right now. At our peak, we had almost 200 employees.
Very good, Jack. So tell us a little bit about the type of work that Shelby is committed to and what they do in the field.
Yeah, so Shelby Erectors is a rebar and metal deck placer in the state of Florida, all throughout the state, and we specialize in bridge and highway transportation work. We do a little bit of a heavy civil work, water treatment plants and things like that, but our bread and butter is really bridges. We're really a bridge builder, and that's where all of our work is, working on, city, county, municipal, and, FDOT projects throughout the state.
Very good, very good. And obviously, when you started out hand tying, then you were exposed to Max tools. How were you exposed to the Max rebar tires, and how long have you owned some?
Yeah, so actually going back to my days with my dad's company, when Max really first started coming out in the market, we gave them a try at that time, and we worked them for a while. We had a hard time getting guys to buy into it, and back then the batteries, needed to be charged, so it was a little bit of a challenge. But then I'd say 5 years ago, we decided to get back into the guns. We started with the RG 498s, and then just about 2 years ago, we transitioned from that fleet of guns to the new twin tires, and we're really happy with that, with the way those guns operate.
Very good. Yeah, Jack, and I know that, when we got you rolling on the tools, it took a good 3-year study to get you convinced to get off the old school. But once we got you into the RB 398s, I think you realized the value. But, tell us a little bit about, before we go into that, but tell us a little bit more about what you see in the industry. How's the future of the steel reinforcing industry turning right now?
Well, I mean, let's face it, right now, until they come up with another alternative, they got to have rebar in the concrete structures to pour concrete. Okay. So the construction industry, in my mind, especially in the infrastructure market, it looks good. I mean, you always hear them talking about, even with the loom of a recession, they're always talking about infrastructure and how they need to improve the infrastructure. And whenever it seems that they need to boost the economy, there's always an insertion of extra funds into the infrastructure to try to do that. And so, that's right within our wheelhouse. So we see the future as being very bright. There being a ton of work out there. A matter of fact, to the point that the challenge is there's just not enough people in the workforce to support what's going to be the need.
Yeah, that is a huge point, Jack, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But so, what are some of the difficulties you face today, other than the workforce himself, as you're working in the industry?
Yeah, so I mean, the challenges always are, skilled labor, and this goes into the workforce. But having skilled labor, our skilled workers are diminishing. They're aging out. So we, besides having the troubles of attracting the next generation into the industry, there's just a lot less experience out there in the field. So, we are an adopter of technologies looking at, hey, this is a problem. How do we solve that problem? And these rebar tying guns are a part of that solution. We got to be able to, this is still a labor market and it's still very competitive. So you got to figure out how you can be productive, even with a diminishing workforce.
Okay, so, Jack, how are you guys, as a major company with over 200 employees, how are you addressing the lack of skilled work, and what are you doing as a company to help bring the next generation in?
Yeah, so part of our plan and the way we've been approaching things is by the adoption of technology. We are a completely paperless company. I think you'll find that have a hard time finding companies within the rebar industry that are completely paperless. We have been for 5 years now. We look at these different tools that can be used to take some of the backbreaking work out. This is tying rebar, especially on decks where you're bent over, like in the picture there, working at your feet. That's a very strenuous and hard activity that you need to do. Even though they're still bent over here, they don't have to have the hip reel and they don't have to be working their hands like they do when they're tying by hand. So, not to mention, these guns, we've tied over 1.5 million ties with these guns since 2021, and we've been keeping track of our cost study. These guns, we're averaging 620 ties an hour per man hour with the guns. And some of those are going to be experienced guys that are using them, but a lot of them are the guys that aren't experienced, that can't tie by hand. And our hand tying cost study shows that we can tie about 225 ties per hour, and that varies also about on the ability of the worker. And I was talking earlier, that's a high fluctuation. Guys that have been doing it for a long time, can tie much faster than the guys that are just getting started.
Great, Jack. And we previously talked about you owning the 398s, and then over the last year and a half, and you own almost 50 tools in your fleet. So, and then talk about 398, and then we over the last year and a half we've upgraded that to the RB 441. So, which is totally different. The long wire versus the 21 gauge versus 19 gauge, two small strands. What are some of the benefits you've noticed since your upgrade in the product to the twin tires?
Well, the twin tires definitely are, there's less jamming. The wire's thicker, and you have the twin tie, which in Florida DOT specs, we got a tie with double strand. So this works out perfect for us. They also offer the wire in a domestic product, so we have that requirement too by USA. So, the twin tires they seem faster. The battery lives are longer. And less problems with the guns. They're very easy to use. You can take somebody right off the street, you train them and they can start tying. In addition to having the handguns, you've got the stand-up guns that can be used. And those things are pretty incredible. I don't know if any of you haven't tried them, you got to try them. you don't need a trigger. You don't have to pull a trigger. It's got a sensor. And as soon as you put it on the intersection, it ties. So it's just a matter of getting used to that stand up and just finding the intersection. The gun's very easy to use, and I really highly recommend those if you got a lot of repetitive deck tying, at your feet.
Very good, Jack. Well, you made mention earlier, Jack, of Shelby being a technologically intensive company. So with technology being part of it, is that what made you translate into from the 398s into the 441s because of the technological advances?
Yeah, the twin tire guns are definitely a better, faster gun, and so yeah, we're always looking at how can we improve, right? You're never satisfied with where you're at. You need to see how do you improve, how do you make it better for your company. The length of wire that you're using is less, you know, with the twin tire, so you're looking at cost per tire, right? That's what it gets down to. And I said this to you when we talked before this, is up until, and you mentioned it, up until I started talking with you guys, we didn't figure cost per tie. That wasn't something that we analyzed. It was just incidental to the placement of the rebar, and we really didn't know what our tying was costing. We didn't know how many ties we were getting per hour. By adopting or taking advantage of what's out there technology wise, you really need to know, hey, how much does it cost me to hand tie versus using the new equipment? Is this cheaper? Is it better? So we really had to step back, and it took us a while because, let's face it, we're a bunch of iron workers, not a bunch of accountants, and it took us a while to figure out how we can collect the data and really analyze it and see where we're at. And but now that we've done that, you can see, you just do the math. The 620 ties per hour versus 220, even though there's an increase in wire costs, it's offset by the amount of labor savings. And as wages go up, that only gets better. Not to mention, again, you can take a brand new guy, and make him productive on day one. Okay. And you can't do that with a new hire. You can't do that with a new hire when you hand him a hip reel. It's going to take that guy a good month or a couple of months to even where he can get proficient at tying. And so, you put these guns in somebody's hand, and they can be proficient, and they can get out there and tie. So
great points, Jack. We appreciate it. So when you talk about being on the job site, you talk about safety and health of your employees, because that's a critical part of your component as well. Tell me a little bit about how these tools have maybe helped in that process as well.
yeah, so I mean, again, that work of tying, especially when you're tying, on decks, it's bent over, tying at your feet, and you got that repetitive motion. So I mean, we all know that the dangers of carpal tunnel and those things, and wear and tear on your joints. And if you ever met any guys that have retired from being a rod buster, their joints are pretty messed up. They've probably got arthritis in there. Yeah, they got that hand, and it's so this will help people to last longer in the trade. It'll make it's easier, less wear and tear on their body. Okay. The stand-up guns are, again, look at that. That's a much more a much better position to be tying in at your feet than all the way bent over. And then, but not having to make those repetitive motions with both of your hands. It's just, it's going to be safer. Your guys are going to last longer, and, you're not going to cripple them at the end of their career.
Very good. Yeah, Jack. And the beauty of the three lines of tools, the stand-up tire, the 441, and 611, it gives you that versatility of tying a variety of bars. As the 611 goes up to 910, the 441 7-on-7, and the stand-up tire 6-on-6. So you get that whole gamut of where you can get to tying wise. So again, great information there, Jack. And you talked a little bit earlier also about the reliability and durability of the products. Have you seen a difference in your repair costs and things of that nature with the new twin tires?
Yeah, it was funny. We talked about it. And I said, I don't hear much about the repair costs, so I had to call my general manager and say, hey, what's going on? Are we having any problems with the lifespan of the tools? He said, yeah, we've sent in, I think he said 4 in the last year and a half to get repaired. And it wasn't the gun that it wasn't tying; it was the counter. It stopped counting, or something got damaged with the dial. So the guns are lasting, and like I said, we've tied over 1.5 million ties. with our fleet of guns. And we're putting a lot of use into them. And the nice thing too is the batteries. The battery lifespan now is so much better than it was, a decade or more ago, where these batteries will last you, if not a full day. If you have one backup battery, you can get through a full work day with the batteries, and then you just charge them overnight. So you don't have to worry about charging on the job site, which was one of the challenges we had early on.
Yeah, correct, Jack. And when we switched from the NiCad battery to the lithium-ion battery, we get up to 4,000 ties per battery charge on a tool, so which is cool. And now we've actually just increased the batteries again to where you're going to get up to 5,000 ties, and that's all about the size of the gas tank and about the amp hour of the battery. So we've increased that battery life for you as well, and the other people in the field. So Jack, just real quick before we talk about the cost analysis and a couple other things, you do some training with your folks, and you're helping some industries rewrite some training manuals and stuff. Tell us just a second about that.
Yeah, so we're an open shop company, we're non-union, but we have a DOT approved, or DOL, Department of Labor approved apprenticeship program for reinforcing ironwork. It's a 2-year, 4,000-hour program. We're real proud of that. We're teaching a curriculum developed by NCCR, and we've actually just recently modified that. And we have an apprenticeship program. So the idea here is, especially with this younger generation that's coming in, that we're trying to attract into the trades, they want to know, hey, maybe college isn't for me, but I still want to learn. Okay. And I still want to know that I'm going to be trained and trained properly. The way I learned is you got dragged around by the foreman, and that's how you learn. It was all on the job, and it was, a lot of trial and error, but not a lot of knowledge being passed down. So what we're focusing on is giving these guys the power and the knowledge to be better and good at their trade, and to be a professional at what you do. And construction is a great industry. It's been a great industry for me and my family, and so I believe strongly in training this next generation to be smarter, to be knowledgeable about their career, to treat it as a career, not just a job, and to see where you can go with it. And so we support that with this 2-year apprenticeship program. College isn't for everybody, and not every job requires you to have a college degree to be successful. So, the kids that go into school and get in debt to pay for a college education, and then they come out and they're not quite sure what they're going to do with themselves, then they come to work for me or in the construction industry. Anyways, they're 4 years behind the curve, right? They're in debt, and then they're going to go through the same. We're going to put them through the same program that we offer to kids who are coming right out of school, or young adults. Anybody. We actively look for people coming out of the military, because we think this is a good environment, working in that team environment that we provide. Doing rebar, it's teamwork. You can't do this by yourself. You're going to work in a crew. Average crew size is 3 to 4 guys, for substructure and columns and caps and stuff like that. And when you get into your decks, you get into your bigger crews. But in general, the average crew size is about 3 to 4 guys.
Very good, Jack. Great information, and we appreciate you training our next generation of rod busters, if you will. Very good, Jack. Well, Jack, that kind of wraps up what we were going to talk about today. And just from our standpoint, is that if there's any out there, if anybody out there, we have our local reps in the field. We have the ability to do for you exactly what we did for Jack Nix and Shelby Erectors. Conduct that cost analysis for you. We have a spreadsheet that drops in your number of people tying, number of ties, size of bar, all of those things, and it'll spit out a calculation for you and see exactly how much the Max rebar tying tools can save for you, as it did for Shelby Erectors and Jack Nix. If we don't have anything going on, any other questions going on, but just remember, guys, Jack, we certainly appreciate you joining us today for this webinar, live virtual. This is the first time we've done one of these. We hope it was beneficial to you attendees on the phone. I know that Jack and I have had a good time putting it together. It's no dirty jobs, but we're getting something going. So,
yeah, for sure.
We appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attendance. We conduct webinars on our product monthly now, so be on the lookout for some more things going on. Again, have a great week. We'll see you in the field, and keep tying. Use Max. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks again, Jack.
Thank you. Have a good one.